Sakpasi, what's going on, guys? My name's Alan.
And I'm Alex.
Welcome to AMICY Theory channel.
Guys, listen, if you're not part of the AMICY gang, click on that subscribe button below and join us to be part of the squad.
Oh, God.
As usual, guys, welcome back to another episode of the AMICY Theory podcast, where we go throughout this world to find the mystery of life that cannot be explained. I had to smoke on my pipe.
Bro, we need a pipe.
I know. Whoa. Pause.
We need a smoke pipe.
So, today we've got what is the truth about Tartaria. Let's do what we're doing a little bit. Stop this video, guys. Let's get it popping.
Let's get it. We need a little hat, too, and a little coat.
Thank you. Get my 1080p. Kings and generals.
There is no great controversy in saying that the internet is full of strange beliefs and theories. With a few clicks of your mouse, you can find message boards to share all sorts of nonsense with people all over the world,
or truths,
throwing ideas back and forth to illuminate non-existent problems. One such conspiracy you may have seen around online is the myth of Great Tartaria, which you can find dropped into posts and videos relating to the Mongol Empire. Today, we'll share with you a short guide to this internet myth and give you some tools you can use to debunk it should you be unfortunate enough to see it in the wild, as well as explore the historical puzzle of the usage of the word Tartar in relation to the Mongol Empire. You know what is not controversial and is always in good taste? The sponsor of this video, Boxu. This monthly snack box holiday box is snacks and culture to Japan. The link is in the amazing snack journey, most basic version.
Thank you.
In short, the myth states that most of the Eurasian continent was, until about 200 years ago, incorporated into a massive empire called Great Tartaria or Tartary. Depending on the chronology the specific poster uses, this either followed the Mongol Empire.
Doesn't this kind of like throw you off because you're like, or watching a TV show, the Targaryens, like, I'm like, they're something's iffy, don't you think?
They give us the message without telling us the message.
Facts. And you got the ice wall
in the
movie. Come on now.
Or the Mongol Empire was in fact a part of this. Usually, Great Tartaria is presented as a period of peace, prosperity, and technological advancement, an idyllic world where all the cultures of Asia lived in harmony. The myth makers generally do not agree on the makeup of the empire's population, with some arguing that they were Mongolian, East Asian, or the Tartars of modern Russia and Eastern Europe, while others argue that the rulers of Great Tartaria were white people or sometimes even giants.
How?
What specifically brings down Great Tartaria is vague. Some of the commenters have Europeans, usually the British Empire, jealous or fearful of Tartaria's might.
If you gotta think, if Britain is anywhere near anything, it was them. Okay, so you guys know, it's always them.
And succeed in not just overcoming it, but destroying all evidence, both literary and archaeological, as well as any folk memory of the empire across all of Asia. So determined were the Europeans to not be challenged in their authority again. Other versions have the same process, but instead stick the blame onto history's favourite scapegoats, the Jews, who sometimes work in tandem with the British Empire, or actually run it, while those who like to see Tartaria's masters as white people tend to have the Jews act.
If we're just noticing, guys, every time the guy brings up something, he says, white people, okay? They're just holding it back.
Hey, he said it, not us.
Hey, I'm just reiterating what the guy said. I heard white people twice now. I'm just saying.
On their own. The end result is the same, with the Jews somehow toppling the empire. Still others have Tartaria's collapse come not from any human power, but ecological, a great mud flood which supposedly blanketed human societies. Tartaria was the great victim, leaving no trace behind except for sunken buildings dotted around the world. The understanding for these adherents, then, is that the rest of history is fabrication filling in the gap left by the flood. But if the British, Jews, or mud erased all evidence of Great Tartaria, then how do these modern super sleuths manage to know of its existence? Well, for all their cleverness, the unseen enemy overlooked one matter: European cartographers of the last 400 years. As the Tartarian truthers have pointed out, Cartographers from across Europe marked massive swathes of Asia as Tartary, Grand Tartaria, and other variations of the term. The trend continues to the modern day, where Tartary continues to be used for the Strait of Tartary, for example, between the Russian coast and the island of Sakhalin. Which suddenly begs the question, if the goal was to remove Tartary from human memory, why can it so easily be found not only in historical maps, but even in modern geographic usage? And this is where the Tartarian theory falls apart, as if struck by a massive mudflood. Tartary, or Tartaria, was simply a European name to refer to most of Asia, and from the 13th century until the 19th, remained perhaps the most common, if rather ambiguously defined. A term which was almost synonymous.
Genghis Khan was putting in work. If what you heard couldn't, oh my lord.
In the European mind with the East.
Is that say Kashmir? Files?
Yeah, Caspian's right there.
I'm just saying, guys. Who else saying it?
Central Asia and Siberia were most regularly referred to as Tartary, often in overlap with Turkestan, Mogulistan, and Dzungaria. Manchuria and China itself, particularly under the Qing dynasty, were sometimes
Bro, are you seeing the orange?
Yeah, this man took over literally everything.
Included in it as well. More ambitious though inaccurate maps even included India. However, it is never a political term but a geographic one, much like how we today will use Africa or Asia to refer to the continents, but understand that these do not refer.
Bro. That man had the whole he had the whole map at this point.
So essentially,
nobody else.
The Middle East is connected to Africa here. You seen that?
Yes.
I'm just saying, guys, because I think the Middle East doesn't exist until they made the Suez Canal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when they made the Suez Canal, they kind of like divided both islands, and then the Middle East began.
Yeah.
Welcome to Africa, everybody.
To unified political bodies. It would be useful then to explore the historical usage of the term Tartar and how it ended up on these maps. For that, we need to look at what Tartar refers to in the historical sources. The word Tartar originally refers to peoples in Mongolia, first recorded in the early 8th century Orkhon inscriptions, and with sparse mentions in the works of Central Asian geographers or Chinese dynastic sources in the following centuries. It reached its widest audience, so to speak, during the Mongol Empire. Generally speaking, sources from outside of the Mongol Empire, especially in the first half of the 13th century, such as Arabic, Persian, Armenian, the Rus Principalities, the Byzantine Empire, and European travelers like Friar Julian, William of Rubric, or John de Plano Carpini, to letters from Queen Rusudan of Georgia or King Louis IX of France, to even Vietnam and Java, refer to the Mongols as Tartars. Sources from the Mongol Empire and Eastern Asia tend to paint more complicated pictures. Independent sources, like the Jin dynasty official Li Xinchuan, or the Song dynasty envoys, whose accounts were compiled in the Mengda Beilu and Haida Shilur, compiled by visitors to the courts of the Mongol viceroy Mukhali and the great Khan Urgadai, use Mongol to refer to the state and Tartar as the population. An intriguing example comes from Urgadai himself, who in a letter demanding the submission of Korea refers to himself and his peoples as Tartars. Historian Stephen Pao has argued that Tartar in the late 12th century served as a general endonym for at least part of the peoples of the Mongolian plateau, with Mongol originally just the dynastic name of the political union established by Genghis Khan in 1206. This is reflected in how sources will constantly refer to people as Tartars, but the empire itself is always the Mongol Empire, the Yeke Mongol Ulus, especially in the few surviving Mongolian language documents of the period, such as the letters of submission the Khans sent to the Pope.
Who brought down the Mongolian Empire?
That's a good one to look to.
I'm like, that's how. It's just.
Then, around the 1240s and increasing over the 1250s, we begin to see a shift in usage, with travelers recording the Mongols reprimanding those who called them Tartars. In the 1240s, Plano Carpini and Simon of St. Quentin record that while others called them Tartars, they preferred to be called Mongols. Carpini's well-publicized account of his travels were awkwardly titled, "The Mongols Whom We Call Tartars." The trend reached its apogee in the later 13th and 14th centuries. Then, in government sources associated with the Tollywood Mongols,
He could have taken over the world.
Yeah.
There was nothing they'd be able to do about it. Bro, what's that? Is that ice above that part?
Where? Above him?
Yeah, above the Mongol.
Oh, no, I think that's
Another version of ice wall. Okay.
Mongol dynasties,
Yeah.
first with Great Khan Mongke, then the Yuan in China and Ilkhanate in Iran.
Oh, that's when they
Mongol
started
becomes
losing.
the catch-all term for the state and people, with Tartar reduced to a single rebellious tribe in eastern Mongolia. The trend kicks off with The Secret History of the Mongols, compiled in 1252 on Mongke's order, and continuing with the most heavily utilized imperial sources, such as the Compendium of Chronicles of the Ilkhanate Vizier Rashid al-Din, or the Ming-era Yuanxi, composed from Yuan imperial documents. There, the Tartars were exterminated by Chinggis Khan at the start of the 13th century. Taken at face value that the Tartars were only a single specific group in Mongolia, it has been difficult to explain how it is that so many peoples across the world kept calling the Mongols Tartars, especially when they had supposedly been exterminated. What precisely kicked off the shift in the usage of Mongol and Tartar by the mid-13th century is unclear. Stephen Powell suggests it may be associated with the fall of the Jin dynasty in 1234, the great enemy of Chinggis Khan. Then, with a new sense of legitimacy and with a whole generation having grown up since the establishment of the empire, Mongol started to become not just the political term, but what we might call the ethnic one as well. The trend, though, seems to be more closely tied to Tollywood lineage, which under Mongke seized the imperial throne in the 1250s and likely actively encouraged the usage, not just in the new imperial historiography, but among the people at large. Non-Tollywood dynasties, such as the Judged Golden Horde, never picked up the distinction, with the exception of Batu's son Sartak. Sartak spent time in the imperial capital of Karakoram and among the Tollywoods, and seems to have identified himself as a Mongol. Hence, when William of Rubruk visited Sartak's encampment in 1253, Sartak's officials insisted that Rubruk not call Sartak a Tartar, but a Mongol. Yet, due to distance and political falling out, Mongol never succeeded in replacing Tartar amongst the Golden Horde's population, made up of Tartars who moved there during the Great Invasion under Batu. Thus, the Golden Horde's population and descendants did not adopt the term Tartar from the Europeans, as is sometimes suggested, but instead had simply never stopped using it. And as Europeans had the closest contact with these populations, Tartar was understood as the name for all nomadic peoples of the steppes. The regular association with the Greek Tartarus resulted in the regular addition by European authors, both medieval and modern, of an extra R in Tartar. Regardless of the specifics of the Chinggisid usage of the term, from the 13th century onwards, Europeans generally understood all lands east of Hungary to be ruled by Tartars, and hence these lands were Tartary or Tartaria, much like how a Roman
Tartaria.
writer would refer to all lands beyond the Rhine vaguely as Germania. The great 14th century English poet Geoffrey Chaucer, in his Squire's Tale, certainly thought this to be the case when he wrote of Cambuscan, the great king of Tartary, at war with Muscovy. European travel along the inner Asian trade routes and across the Mongol Khanates continued into the mid-14th century, by which point plagues, wars between the Khanates, and collapse of most of them left the route too dangerous for further journeys. Without new information on the changing political makeup of
How'd
Asia,
they beat
in the following
the Roman
centuries,
Empire?
it was
they
usually
did
assumed
more.
that the Tartars simply
Huh?
continued to rule. When Christopher Columbus set out at the end of the 15th
This
century,
guy.
he
Fraud.
expected to reach China and anticipated to still find descendants of Kublai Khan ruling there, not knowing that the Yuan dynasty had been pushed from China well over a century prior. Even as European contact and knowledge of Asia increased over the early modern period, the understanding of the region, particularly the steppes, as the lands of the Tartars,
What's new? Christopher Columbus still not knowing information going to different places.
remained difficult to drop, particularly when many of these states were still ruled by people who considered themselves descendants of Genghis Khan, Tamerlane, or both. In the case of India, being ruled by the Mughal dynasty was enough for some to lump it into Tartaria as well. Europeans were not above considering anyone they saw as remotely similar to the Mongols as Tartars. The Manchu, rulers of the Qing dynasty, were often referred to as Tartars even after the Qing dynasty fell in 1912. You can still find modern authors who will still
What's up?
Oh my! All these empires are falling.
I know, right?
mistakenly call the Manchu Tartars. Today, though, the only people regularly referred to as Tartars remain the largely Muslim Turkic people across Eastern Europe and the Russian Federation, a multitude of peoples from Poland to Crimea to Siberia who are descendants of the Golden Horde. Siberia itself makes an interesting comparison. The name comes from a later Tartar Khanate, the Khanate of
Bro, how
Sibir,
big is Russia?
which itself was named for one of its major sites, the Sibir Fortress, noted in the 14th century Rus chronicles. With the Russian conquest of the Khanate in the 16th century, the former Khanate and neighboring territory were known as Siberia. Gradually, this has grown in scale. As an administrative term, the Russian government uses it strictly for the Siberian Federal District, while popular usage has it for essentially everything east of the Urals to the Arctic Ocean, territory which, only 200 or 300 years prior, would have been dubbed Tartary. It should be emphasized that Central and East Asian history is not a gap that needs to be filled by a Tartarian empire. From Asian sources in hundreds of languages and forms, we have plenty of information on the political makeup of the region following the Mongol Empire. Turkic, Persian, Chinese, and Russian sources, to name but a few, attest to the later histories of the various Mongol Khanates and their own successors, from the Timurids to the Uzbeks and Kazakhs in Central Asia, the Safavids in Iran to the Oirats, or Western Mongols, from whom came the Kalmuks and the Dzungar Empire, later giving its name to Dzungaria. The belief in a vast erased history of an empire known as Tartary comes from a misunderstanding of European map-making from the 16th to 19th century.
I always find maps interesting. So which one is in French? Because it's Amérique, Amazon. Oh. See, this is what I found interesting. I was trying to tell you this. I was actually going to mention this to you. California is an island. California.
Right, it said California not even like it's after the.
It used to be called North Carolina, or not North Carolina, like Carolina.
Yeah, after the Queen, and then they took it. They changed it. Another one to add. Jeez.
One of the things I really want to check out, Alan, has to do with Mexico and Texas. Because when I was in St. Louis, Missouri, I learned about like the Alamo from the United States standpoint, and never from the Mexico standpoint.
Like that, I don't know what that is.
So the Alamo was like a battle against like the Alamo was a fort. I actually went to visit the Alamo, tiny fort, but they essentially were standing in the way of the Mexican army going across, and they were essentially like the last line of defense between the Mexicans coming through and whatever it was. But they made the Americans look like they were heroes. So I want to know what the actual information is as far as why Mexico was trying to advance, because Texas, I'm pretty sure, is Mexico. They just kept pushing everybody backwards. Every word over there is literally a Spanish sounding word. But I'm like, San Andreas? Come on now. San Jose? Come on. Bro, San Jose, California? What are you doing here, guy? Okay.
Which would often...
Hold on, I'm just looking up something. La Louisiane, Canada, Floride, Cuba, Jamaica.
lazily refer to vast tracts of Asia as Tartaria. Any supporter of the Tartarian myth must ask the question, which is more likely, that some faceless organization completely erased the history of a vast Tartarian empire archaeologically and in sources across the breadth of Asia in hundreds of languages, and replaced its existence with made-up dynasties, polities, and empires, but was unable to erase its presence from maps, which can be found in books purchased easily from your local bookshop, or that European map makers simply stuck with convention and referred to much of Asia as Tartaria because of its association with Tartars and Mongols. No shortage of peoples from around the world can attest to Europeans' tendencies to care little for the accuracy of colonial-era naming conventions. Just ask the Indians who
right above bro, French used to have almost the entire United States. Because right above Florida it says Canada ou Nouvelle-France. So Canada or New France.
Damn.
That, like, from literally Florida Gap all the way up.
live in North America, how well colonists like to be accurate with names. Further, it can hardly be said European map makers had any need to necessarily reflect the truth of the situation on the ground. European empires liked to portray themselves controlling vast stretches of the American or African continents, even when in reality they had no troops physically present or any control over matters on the ground. Just because a Spanish cartographer could show the Spanish Empire controlling the entire western coastline from South America to British Columbia does not mean that Spain actually exerted control over such a region. Such facts, however, never got in the way of good imperial map-making. Belief in the state of Great Tartary rests entirely on taking European map-making as the single highest, most reliable form of evidence of the last few centuries, and reducing all other sources to forgeries, barring those few excerpts which can be removed from their contexts. Utilizing sources from any period always requires understanding their contexts, and reasons why they were made, a level of nuance that the internet...
Okay, we're good here. It's over. Guys, that was the information about the truth about Tartaria. I don't think any of it was true at all. If it's a British guy explaining it, I don't trust it. I need an Asiatic person going, this is the truth, guys. I trust nothing. Guys, listen. If you're not a part of the AMICY gang, click on that subscribe button below and join us in the part of the squad. And at all times, don't cheat yourself.
Love thyself.
And keep it AMICY. Peace.
Peace.
Liars.
I